starts now on 97.3 The Fan.
Hello and welcome into the Skraby Show for January 22nd, 2025. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed Gwyn and Chris. Michael Flicks doing his thing. I mean, he comes prepared. I gotta tell you, I've worked with a lot of people in this business, and Michael Flicks is one of the most prepared people we have on the show. So appreciate Michael Flicks for that. Tonight I was going to talk about something completely different, but the news, the press conference, Roki Sasaki being introduced by the Dodgers happened today. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And I want to get into like some misconceptions about us here at 97.3 The Fan, or at least me. I'm going to speak for myself because I see a lot of rumors flying around social media, and I just would like to stop down and talk about it for a second. So we'll get to that in a little bit. We're also going to talk about I'm trying to get back to my sheet. This has been a disaster. I was trying to get everything switched back for the show, and so I didn't get everything switched back as fast as possible, so I didn't get everything ready. But we are going to talk about something. Actually, Eric Chavez, we played a little bit earlier on the show, and Eric Chavez, said something about what the Dodgers are doing. I think we should hear. And although it doesn't really make everything better, I think it makes everything gives a little bit of perspective to things. So we'll talk about that. And Buster Olney was on the show earlier. I'm going to try to bring back some of that. There's also some stories at the end about the Chiefs' penalties, and they've caught the guys who broke into Joe Burrow's home. So some of those stories, if we get to them at the end, we get to them. But right now, we should talk about the Roki Sasaki press conference that he did up in L.A. And I to be honest, I don't care about this anymore. And the reason is because he's not coming here. So I'm not going to spend any more time and worry about someone who's not going to be here. And I do understand that it does hurt that he's not a Padre. Basically, it hurts in this way. Padres need pitching, and they were not able to secure starting pitching in Roki Sasaki. But what were some of the other reasons that he joined? Those were the questions that I had after he announced that he was going to be with the Dodgers. And so some of those things were actually revealed today in his press conference. And he did some of it in English. He did some of it, he had translated. But the number one thing that everybody wants to know was whether or not the Padres' situation with the lawsuit affected his decision to come to San Diego. And now, depending on where you sit, you could go either way with this. And I'll tell you at the end where I'm going with this. But he said about the front office, the number one thing that stood out about the Dodgers was the stability of the front office. Now, yes, they do have a stable front office. They've got everything going for them right now. We've already talked about that. But here's the thing I think is easy to run. Here's the part of it I think is easy to run with, in that he says the stability of the front office. He never said the Padres, and I'm not going to sit here and defend the Padres just because I work on this station. Working on this show has taught me a few things, or working on Gwyn and Chris has taught me a few things. And one of those things is I can't assume anything. And so the regular sports Skraby brain that I have outside of the radio, I do think about some of these things. I have all the thoughts that everybody does. Oh, man, this is the disaster. This is because of this. This is because of that. But honestly, we really don't know. And so if you're looking for me to say and crush the team and all that stuff, I can't do that. I don't have all of the information. Now, when he says that the front office was a key, I mean, there were other teams, too, that were a part of this and have front offices that aren't undergoing a lawsuit. And so I don't necessarily think that he is saying the one and total reason that he did not choose the Padres was because of their front office situation, I don't think we can assume that because it wasn't said. And I would like to know. I really would. I want someone to ask him the question directly. Did this situation with the Padres make you choose the Dodgers? Honestly, from what we've all been hearing, this has already been a done deal for a very long time. So with the Dodgers, I'm saying. So did the Padres ever really have an upper hand in this thing? Did any team really have an upper hand in this whole thing? We don't know. And we really don't know. And I brought this up a few weeks ago because I wanted to find some examples of does situation matter. And I brought up two guys in the NFL that I guess their situation, the money outweighed the situation. That would be Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys are a complete disaster this year in the last few years, but both of those guys signed extensions with the Cowboys knowing what they were getting themselves into. And I know that baseball and football are different in a way, but when you look at that, Dak Prescott could have easily said, I don't want to deal with this sideshow of Jerry Jones anymore. I want to get out of here. I want to go to a different team. I want to be in a different situation. Obviously, what's going on with the Cowboys was not enough to make Dak Prescott want to go to another team. Or CeeDee Lamb didn't make him want to go to another team too. So I don't know that situation and, even though he's saying front office stability, that's a really easy thing to say. Because, the Dodgers haven't always had that front office stability. So do I understand why some people are directly linking this quote to the fact that the Padres have a situation going on? I understand that. But the irrational person in me that I have to continually fight back in my head, the irrational person in me says, yes, it absolutely has to do everything with what's going on with the Padres. Because, it's hard not to think that, honestly. But as I just said a couple minutes ago, I have learned that I can't really assume anything until I know all the information. So I know there are people out there probably thinking, man, this guy's just covering up for the Padres. And that's not the case. It really is not the case. I just don't know who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. There's truths on both sides. There's a lot of information that we're just not privy to, and it would make me pretty irresponsible to come on here and just start speculating about things that I don't even know about, because I don't like spreading rumors. I don't like being salacious. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to say something that's not true just to get people to, just to appease some people out there. I honestly think the majority of people listening right now are probably in the camp of, we don't know everything, and so we have to wait and figure it out. And then the rest are in the camp of, this is the Padres' fault, and we should hate them forever. But I don't know that we could do that. Again, we don't even know if this was even a real thing, a real courting process between Roki Sasaki and the rest of baseball. We talked about it last night. An anonymous executive said that if you give the Dodgers truth serum, they will tell you that this deal has been done for a long time. Now, I do think, in regards to like the timing of everything, and again, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but the timing wasn't great. There's just no way around that. This was a pretty important time for free agency, and the timing was not great. And I don't really know why it all happened when it did, but it's something that I will want to figure out as we go along, why it was done when it was done, because it does at face value seem like it would hurt free agency. But everybody I talk to, and I've contacted former athletes that I've worked with before and asked them about this, and they have all told me basically the same thing. Yeah, situation is important, but sometimes situation doesn't mean everything. And you can not like some part of an organization, but you still want to play for them because you like the team. And if we're even now, I'm kind of bouncing all over around at this time, I'm bouncing all over the place right now. But if we're even going to break down the Roki Sasaki quote, the number one thing that stood out about the Dodgers was the stability of the front office. He never said ownership. And I'm not one of these people who likes to go and read between the lines, but that is what I do. I'm not the type of person who wants to go through every single word and break it down. But in this case, if we do break down every single word, he never said ownership. He just said the front office. Is front office connected with ownership? Yes. But the front office is business as usual right now, for the most part. Now, Roki Sasaki and the whole money thing, like, oh, the Padres can't spend, and so they missed out on him. The money thing wasn't an issue at all in this entire thing. Roki Sasaki was only going to make the max amount that he was going to make. It was, I think the Padres said that they offered $10 million, most, if not all, of their international signing bonus pool signing money. And so, the fact that the Padres missed out on him is not because they couldn't afford to pay him or they're on a hiring freeze. It's not. It just isn't. Because he was in a separate class by himself. And I know the doomers are out there. I'm a doomer myself at times. But I'm really looking at this, and I don't know that I can blame everything on the lawsuit. I can't. Because we're still 2 months away from the season starting. This team still has time to be put together. And I saw a couple people say it on the chat earlier that I saw it on the chat a little bit earlier. You know what? I forgot what I was going to say on the chat. Gosh, this happened to me 2 nights in a row. I got too many thoughts going on in my head right now. I should have actually written all these down to get them in order, but I didn't. And so I have too many thoughts. But there's my little spiel on the whole Sasaki front office stability appeal to him. I mean, I think everybody wants stability in their front office, but there are a lot of teams around baseball that have signed free agents that do not have stability in their front office. So I don't know that we can really could really go there. I'm trying to look at the chat. RJ says, love the show, Skraby. Would argue that you guys jumped to conclusions with the Bauer decision. After the text messages were released, do you change your mind? Would be great on the pods. First off, I don't even know if Trevor Bauer can play baseball anymore. I know he's putting up videos and stuff, but it's against not major league players. And I know that he won't fit in this clubhouse. I know that that's a popular thing, and it will never happen. I'm sorry. It will never happen for the Padres. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But after I'm trying to reread the question. After the text messages were released, do you change your mind? You know what I did in this whole situation? I didn't believe either of them, which is where I'm at now with the lawsuit. It's not that I don't believe either of them. I just don't know what to believe from either of them. Same goes for the Trevor Bauer situation, because I've seen all of the text message. I've seen all that stuff, and I believe that both of them are wrong in the whole situation. I think took two to tango, and I don't want to get too deep into it because obviously this was a very sensitive situation, but I can't go into anything believing one side or the other unless I am that side and I know the truth. Let's see. It was, you know what? I'm going to go to break, actually. I'm going to go through some of these comments instead of just sit here reading them on the air and not being, very entertaining. So I'm going to go to break. We're going to read some comments, and then I want to address some misconceptions when we get back on 97.3 The Fan.
Drowning in
Sometimes I see things on social media and it's about like the station or someone that I know. And it's something that's not, truthful. And so I want to defend it, but I don't most of the time usually because it's really not in my best interest. Again, I'm someone who does not like to get into Twitter arguments. I'm someone who does not like to confront people unless it's Tony or Chris. I'm someone who is, tries to keep his life pretty even keeled. I really just don't really like to get too high or too low these days. Believe me, when I was an alcoholic, well, I still am an alcoholic, always will be an alcoholic, but when I was drinking, I was saying crazy things all the time, being emotional all the time. And so I've worked really, really, really hard over the past 8 years to get myself in a place where I can handle situations like a mature adult. And I'm talking about everything in my life. And I have seen what has been floating around. I've been asked by everyone that wanted to ask me, not everyone, but everyone who sent me a message, if it's true or not. And I'm just not gonna play any audio or anything like that. If you want to find it, go to Discord or something like that, and someone could send it to you. But here's what I find. Here's what I find a little. Here's what is not the truth. Let me start this over. That was not a very graceful way of getting into this, but here is my truth. I'm only speaking for myself. And so when you hear things out there about this station or that station or this guy or that guy, just know that there's probably another story behind it and you can't believe everything you see. I have never been told by any Padres official to not say anything about their team, ever. I have never talked to a Padres official about the shows, ever. I have never seen any Padres radio or executive in this radio station. It just hasn't happened. And I'm here from like 11 a.m. to about 8 p.m. mostly every single day. I am not paid by the Padres. I don't have any affiliation with them outside of working on this station. I am not in their pocket. I am not. I have never been told to put lipstick on a pig. I have never, ever been told to say something I didn't believe in. I pride myself on being an honest person, and I pride myself at trying to get all the information before I go on the radio and say it. I may have crazy takes off the radio when with friends or when we're talking at an event. But on the radio, without being too, taking this too seriously, I have a responsibility to make sure I am not giving false information. And so when I'm getting crushed in my DMs for protecting the Padres, this has been going on for some weeks now, and ever since really the lawsuit came out, and I've been trying to just keep my blinders on and move forward, but I can't anymore because I'm getting so many messages just telling me that I'm dumb for siding with them, and how could I do that? How could I lie to listeners? I've never lied to any of you. And so when people say, oh yeah, they were told to say this, or they were told to say that, I'm telling you right now, at least for me, no one has ever come to me and said anything. No one has ever come to Tony and said anything. No one has ever come to Chris and said anything. So I know for a fact us three, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the station, but I'm not going to speak for the rest of the station because I'm not here. But I have to at least try and put some sort of truth out there. Because everybody runs with things, and I understand I run with things too. I do. But it's what is being said sometimes is not true. And I will never come on here, and I will never just say something because someone told me to say it. It's just not going to happen. And I think people believe me. I do. I think people on the chat believe it. And I think that a lot of people out there believe it, but there are certain people that do not believe it. So I haven't been in my DMs in quite some time because of all the people that have told me I'm a shill and all those things. I am not a shill. I promise you that. Because if I was, I probably wouldn't be working here on the radio station because it would be too one-sided. So I just wanted to get that out there and say it. I really do. I love it and I do love it how Dodgers fans come into the chat. And I love that Dodgers fans, like, for some reason, take their time to come make fun of Padres fans. I mean, that seems like one of the lamest things someone can do. Just go, Dodgers fans, go enjoy your team. Go enjoy it. You must be a pretty miserable person if you're in a Padres chat talking trash to all the Padres fans. And Oscar, I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. And McKee, people push their own narrative, Skraby. The Delulu is strong with them. Matt says, Skraby, is that true that Roki kills dogs for sport? It's not, Matt. Not that I know of. I don't know that Roki does that to dogs. All right. Got that off my chest. And got a Dodgers fan to say I was lame. So life is good. Life is good, everyone. I also saw a suggestion in the chat for someone that the Padres should sign, and I thought he was actually already on the team. But local guy, Connor Joe. Let's see. Connor Joe, is he still free agent? I think he is. Connor Joe is from San Diego. He is a good bench player. And according to Emma Key, she said that he's got great hair. And I can't deny that he's got great hair. So if we want someone with great hair on the team, then Connor Joe could come over here and boost the hair, what is it? The hair flow? I don't know. I'm trying to be cool, and I'm not actually cool at all. And I'm just still getting text messages. I don't understand it. People, this is the final thing I'll say about it. I am not in the Padres' pocket. Okay? That's it. I've never been told anything. All right, moving on. I've said too much already. Now, we were talking about ticket prices, recently, and the Rays are actually raising their ticket prices for this upcoming season, but they're doing it because of one reason, and fans are a little upset about it, and I understand why fans are upset about it. No one wants to pay more for a ticket, but because of the hurricane, I can't even remember the hurricane's name at this point. My brain is hurting right now. But the hurricane ripped the roof off of the stadium. And so they didn't have a stadium, and it actually damaged more than just a stadium. It damaged a lot of offices that were in Tropicana Stadium. So they're going to be moving to the Yankees spring training facility, Steinbrenner Field, which is in the area. And obviously it's a lot smaller of a stadium, and so they're going to have less inventory on tickets, and they're going to make less money. So what they're doing is they're raising prices in order to make up for that money that they're missing out because they can't sell as many tickets. Now, I don't know that a lot of Rays tickets were being sold to begin with, and this does, at face value seem like an ownership group that's just trying to nickel and dime their fans, but there's extenuating circumstances, and a hurricane destroying your stadium is one of those things. The Rays have to stay afloat somehow. I mean, I understand the blowback, but I also understand what the Rays are doing. They can't just keep their tickets priced at the same price that they had last year, because if they do that, then they're just going to be taking losses all season long. So they're going to have to, kind of counterbalance that a little bit. And I'm curious to see how many fans are drawn to Steinbrenner Park or Field. I'm curious about that because I don't know how much Tampa really loves the Rays. I mean, you always watch their games in that Tropicana Stadium field. I think it's Tropicana Field. You always watch games there, and it's always like half full, even when they're a really, really good team. So I'm not sure if this is the Rays' way of slipping in a ticket price hike. Maybe it is, or maybe it's just out of necessity because they can't go under, which they definitely are not one of the most well-off major league teams in baseball right now. Do the Padres go? Let me see if the Padres go to Tampa this year. They just went to Tampa last year, actually, so I don't think that they're going to be going to Tampa this year. I'm looking at the schedule behind me just to try and figure out if they even play the Rays this year. I'm not seeing. Oh, yes, they do play them at home. Actually, in April, end of April. So Padres aren't going to be going to Steinbrenner Field this coming year, but the Padres will be going to the new A's stadium in Sacramento, Sutter Health Park. It's in the first 2 weeks of the season. Their first road trip, actually, or their second road opponent. They go play the Cubs in the second week of the season, and then they head to Sacramento to play the A's. So we'll at least get to see one minor league ballpark as a Padres fan and as a Padres watcher. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Okay. I'm going to regroup in the break. I'm going to talk about Joe Burrow and his burglary of his house and what these guys had. This is what I want to start with, at least. These guys were found with something in their car that actually creeps me out. And it's creepy for a few reasons. And I'll tell you when we get back on 97.3 The Fan. Final segment, Skraby Show, 97.3 The Fan. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting up with my rants. Thank you for putting up with my sometimes disjointed thoughts in my head. I just wrote some things down so that I'm a little bit more structured going forward. But when I really get going on something and I feel strongly about it, I just go with it, which isn't always the best thing in the world. So I said that I wanted to start with Joe Burrow, and we will get to Joe Burrow and his house that was robbed maybe a few months ago. But I did forget to bring this up because I was so caught up in the Sasaki press conference earlier that I wanted to talk about it. But, I mean, we've been looking for rumors, and I can't believe I didn't think about this earlier. But we've been looking for rumors for the Padres. We've been trying to figure out what are they going to do with this roster. They need 2 starting pitchers. They need possibly a catcher. They need a left fielder. Well, there has been a rumor floating around about someone who's on a team that the Padres trade with quite often, honestly. And that would be the Marlins. The Padres seem to do A.J. Preller has a few teams that he likes to trade with. Seems like he likes to trade with the Marlins, the Mariners, and the Guardians. He seems like he really loves to trade with those teams. But this guy was pretty good. He got hurt, but Sandy Alcantara, he won the Cy Young in 2022, and Bleacher Report's Tim Kelly is predicting that the Padres go after Alcantara, and they could put him into the rotation. Now, they're also kind of saying that maybe this would have to be in conjunction with a Dylan Cease move. I don't see the Padres trading Dylan Cease to the Marlins. I just don't see that. I see them keeping Dylan Cease over adding Alcantara, but Alcantara, he's coming off of that Tommy John surgery. I do think that he obviously would be a good addition. I'm always really worried about pitchers and their arms and if they've had previous injuries before, because it seems like when you have a previous injury to your arm, like a UCL injury or a Tommy John surgery, it seems like that there's definitely a higher rate of re-injury throughout if you've already had one of those injuries and you had the surgery for one of those injuries. And so Alcantara, he's been out since 2023. He missed much of 2023 and all of 2024 after getting the surgery, but he'll be back in 2025 ready to go, and he'll be more than ready to go because he's had plenty of time to heal up from this and get back to, throwing health. But he signed here's where I kind of think that there's no real truth to the rumor, because they signed the Marlins signed him to a $56 million extension, and although he is pretty affordable for the next couple years, let me go to a spot track. He's going to make $17.3 million in 2025 and 2026. The luxury tax number, however, is a lot lower than that. It's $11.2 million, which is very interesting for me because you're paying him $17.3, but it's only counting $11.2 against the luxury tax, which actually would help the Padres a lot. Because, Shohei Ohtani has that $70 million a year salary, but I think $44 million is the max that he could put towards the luxury tax. So if the Padres are going to get a pitcher of this quality, Sandy Alcantara, and they're going to save some money on the luxury tax, and then they could kind of have a blueprint for what they've done in the past, I think this might be a really good option for the Padres. And I think it would help some of us kind of calm our brains down a little bit about how the roster is looking so far. He's a big name, and he's definitely been good. And I know that he's been good against the Padres. So I would like to see this happen if they weren't going to give away a Dylan Cease or another starting pitcher. Because they can't, and I know we've been talking about trading Dylan Cease forever, but if you're going to get Sandy Alcantara, you might as well pair him up with the rotation that you already have and make that rotation really good. And so when I was saying that they could have a blueprint for the future and what they kind of already do, in 2027 in his contract, he has a club option for $21 million. So that's 3 seasons from now. And who knows where the Padres are 3 seasons from now. But these are affordable numbers, especially in a time where we don't really know what is going on with how much payroll they want to pay this year, the Padres. $21 million in 3 seasons, that could be a steal, or it could be an easy, hard pass by the Padres because he didn't pitch well. Or they could head into that 2027 season. They could trade him at the trade deadline and get some guys for him. Now, there's many things that have to go right for this to work, but I do think this is a doable thing for the Padres. And this is one of those creative moves that we talk about with AJ Preller. This would be creative to get a guy who has a lower luxury tax, not getting paid like ace money, and I think it would work. And McKee23 says, plus the Niebla effect. I love it. KG says, this is exactly the type of signing we have been needing. Mostly people are, it seems like mostly people are into the Alcantara thing. I'm into it too. I'm going to bring this up with the guys tomorrow because I think they would be into it as well, except for Chris. Because Chris had Sandy Alcantara on his fantasy baseball team when he got hurt. And so Sandy Alcantara definitely hurt Chris's fantasy baseball chances. That is for sure. And we all know that Chris has a long memory for people who do him dirty in fantasy sports. Yes, we do all know that. Okay, Joe Burrow. We're going to get into like some fun stuff now. So Joe Burrow, the news out about this is creepy for so many reasons. And they caught these Chilean nationals. This is coming from a Cincinnati news station. But I guess these guys are accused of burglarizing multi-million-dollar homes, and not just one, many. Alexander Chavez, Bastian Morales, Jordan Sanchez, and Sergio Cabello face multiple charges, including participating in a criminal gang, engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity, and obstructing official business in possession of criminal tools. The 4 men were arrested during an ongoing investigation involving burglaries of multi-million-dollar homes in multiple states. I believe they think Travis Kelce's break-in is involved in this, or is part of this as well. But here's the thing that I find really creepy. They don't specifically name Burrow in the documents, but the investigators wrote that during a search of the suspect's SUV, they found, quote, an old LSU shirt and Bengals hat believed to be stolen from the December 9th, 2024 burglary in Hamilton County. That's what's creepy to me. I don't know if it's creepy to any of you, but thinking about someone being in my house and taking my clothes, especially clothes like that gives me the shivs. That's like, remember when, I think this was like one of the first Skraby show topics that kind of was like people were really creeped out by. And it was frogging, PHROGGING, which means people like live in your house and you don't know that they live in their house. They live in your house. They live in like the attic or something. And the whole thing was I watched this movie that creeped me out because there were froggers in there. And so they were living in the house. It's like a whole thing where you don't pay rent. You don't let the people know that you're living in their house. And I saw some videos of a guy in New York in an apartment that would climb out of the ceiling at night and eat food and all of that stuff. But to steal like an old LSU shirt and a Bengals hat from his house is super creepy to me. It feels so violating to have someone come into your house, go through your stuff, and then pick out something, an old LSU shirt that Joe Burrow has worn before, which is even weirder and probably why they wanted it, and then a Bengals hat. Like, do you want to put yourself into do you want to put yourself in jail? Because when they pull you over and they put 2 and 2 together, you've been robbing these houses and you got an LSU shirt and a Bengals hat that you stole, it's going to point right back at you. But I don't know. If you've had your house broken into before, I'm sorry, because I've had a friend who had his house broken into, and he didn't like going back to his house for a long time because it's scary. It's unnerving to know that someone has found their way into their house while you're not there. So they definitely, as Blue Meanie says on the chat, they definitely went through his stuff, which is so wrong in so many ways. So wrong in so many ways. But I found that creepy, and I don't really know how else to describe it, because if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm moving. I'm not even putting an alarm on the house. I'm just moving, and I'm never telling anyone my address ever again, even though it's very hard for people to not know where someone lives. I definitely am taking some more precautions if I am Joe Burrow. Katrina said, in Fluffy's new special on Netflix, he said he had it happen and he sold the house because he didn't feel safe. I 100% agree with that. I can't even imagine, because then you're always kind of looking over your shoulder. I'm telling you, my friend didn't want to go back to his house for a long time. And at the time, he was a 35-year-old guy, and he was like checking in his closets. He was checking under his bed every single night. It's a very unnerving thing. So again, if you've been through that, I'm sorry. And if you haven't been through it, just know it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. All right. The Patrick Mahomes penalties. We're going to get into this a little bit more tomorrow because Chris has a lot to say about this. But we've all been kind of hinting at it. We think the Chiefs get more calls in the playoffs than other teams do. And we saw the very, questionable roughing the passer penalties that happened in the game against the Texans over the weekend. But ESPN Warren Sharp of @SharpFootball, he did a deep dive on these penalties. And I'm going to give you the numbers, and then we'll talk about it more in depth tomorrow. But the Chiefs, since 2021 in the playoffs, they've had 36 penalties called against them in the playoffs. It has cost them 319 yards. Their opponents since 2021 in the playoffs have had 66 penalties called, and they also have 541 penalty yards called against them. That's a huge disparity. That is a massive disparity. And if you go into it a little bit further, the Chiefs in the last, since 2021 in the playoffs, they have never faced an opponent who has had more penalties called on them than the Chiefs. So the Chiefs always have less penalties, or I think I said that wrong. The opponent has never had less penalties than the Chiefs. So if we're looking at the numbers, if we're sitting here and we're looking at these, those tell me a very convincing story that the referees in the NFL are trying to get the Chiefs through the playoffs. So I said the more penalties, they've never had more penalties than their opponent. They've only had in one game in the last 11, or since 2021, they have only had more penalty yards than their opponent one time. The opponents, 10 times they have had more penalty yards. I don't really know how you can look at this and say, hey, there's not something here. It's just random. It's just they're calling the best game. Maybe the Chiefs aren't committing any penalties. And Warren Sharp says in his article, and you can go to his Twitter, @SharpFootball, he breaks it all down. But Warren Sharp basically says you have to be the best team in the NFL at being, I guess, playing by the rules is what I described that very terribly, but he really said is that I don't know how to explain this, and I'm kind of embarrassed right now because I'm stumbling over my words on the radio. But he said you have to be the most conditioned team in the NFL to not have penalties called on you, as much as the Chiefs haven't had penalties called on them. Like they're not committing penalties at all. Jeez, that took me a long time to get out. Here's the last thing, and then again we're going to get into it more tomorrow. interesting penalty differentials that stood out during the Chiefs' last 4 postseasons. Chiefs opponents have had 7 roughing the passer penalties called on them, only 1 on Kansas City. Chiefs opponents have had 4 unnecessary roughness calls on opponents, only 1 on Kansas City. The Chiefs opponents have had 11 defensive pass interference penalties or defensive holding on opponents 11 times. Chiefs, only 2. So, not saying there's a conspiracy, but I'm saying there's a conspiracy because this is a problem. And, you know, when we see things and people tell us we're crazy, sometimes you look at the numbers and everything works out. Everything works out, and it shows me that the Chiefs are cheating. That's what I'll say.
What's annoying Skraby today? Let's find out. It's time for the Daily Gripe.
All right. Daily Gripe today is something about my dog. And you all know Lucky. We love him. We love him here on the Skraby Show. We love him here on 97.3 The Fan. But Lucky is a golden retriever husky. And Lucky sheds a lot. And he goes in like little waves of shedding. Like he goes in the spring he sheds, and in the fall he sheds. And when I'm saying he sheds a ton. Like I have tried my hardest to keep my life in a place where there's not dog hair everywhere. But I swear to you, he just walks down the hallway and he drops like 10 pounds of hair. So that's my daily gripe for today is Lucky shedding. I mean, I went to go pet him goodbye today. From the head to his back. Guess what? Handful of hair. So I've de-shedded him a few times. I know that might not actually be a thing, but I've taken him in to so people can get that hair out. But, man, Lucky, I love you. But you shed so much, and it's a lot to deal with. But I love you. Just shedding like crazy, which like that. And she has a name for her car, Fur Runner, because he sheds everywhere. Every time you get in the car, just everywhere. All right. Sorry about that disjoint, everyone. Lots of thoughts going on, lots of different angles to go at. And I appreciate you being here with me. We will be back tomorrow. Ben and Wood, 6 a.m. Annie Nelson, 10 a.m. Gwen and Chris, 2 p.m. on 97.3 The Fan. Have a good night, everybody.
I'm Joe Ostrowski here to help you beat the books with BetQL.